Hey everyone, my name's Joe, and this is a pre-roll for the podcast that I co-host. Also, it's my birthday today, April 26th, so that's pretty exciting. But not as exciting as joining How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up, the Facebook group, right? And depending on when you're listening to this episode, you can join the conversation and receive a little shout out on one of our upcoming episodes. How, you may ask? Well, we'll be recording our reviews of the movies Blockers, Rampage, and of course the upcoming Avengers movie, Avengers Infinity War, in just 2 days, on April 28th. And if you want to join the discussion on our Facebook group about any of those movies, Mike and I would love to reference your opinion in one of those upcoming episodes. So that's cool. Go and do that before the 28th. Also, on the 28th, we'll be doing our monthly Facebook Live episode. So keep an eye out for that by liking us on Facebook. Definitely keep an eye out on all of our social media handles, like Instagram or Twitter, or any of the other ones that I did not mention. We may or may not have some upcoming live shows this summer, like in a venue, like in person. That'd be cool, right? Anyway, I believe that's everything. As always, if you want to support the podcast, check out howmanyfingerspodcast.bigcartel.com to buy a t-shirt or a koozie or maybe even some stickers. We've got a really special episode today. We're reviewing Isle of Dogs with Peter Granata, aka DJ Pete. Let's get into it. Hi, my name's Joe.
And I'm Mike.
And you're listening to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? The podcast. And this week we'll be reviewing Isle of Dogs.
Yeah, I mean, I love dogs too, man.
Oh no, it's just Isle of Dogs.
It's not a competition. We can both love dogs, dude.
Hey everyone, and welcome to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up, featuring two guys getting a hitch in their giddy-up and reviewing movies in a weekly podcast form.
Yeehaw, and thank you to Samak on Facebook for that synonym suggestion. Which, does that have anything to do with getting drunk? A hitch in your giddy-up? I've never heard that before.
I don't know.
It sounds cool. I'm going to add it to my vocabulary and probably use it in the incorrect setting.
Whatever it is, I'm in.
Yes, yeah.
DJ Pete is
as
in
am I.
As well. Joe, do you want to introduce the person that I just introduced as well?
Wow.
Inadvertently.
Spoiler alert,
God
Mike.
damn it.
Yeah, but betwixt us, we have Peter, how do you say? I've always pronounced your last name Pete, first name DJ. But it's actually Peter Granata, or?
Yeah, it's actually pronounced Granata.
Damn it, I was that close. I just,
Yeah,
but
that's it, Granada. Yeah.
Okay, good.
I'm an idiot.
What nationality is that? Is that just like?
Sicilian, Italian,
Oh, okay,
somewhere
cool.
in that
In that
vicinity.
that general area.
Yeah.
But yeah, we know Peter as a few things. I mean, there's DJ Pete, which I'm sure we'll refer to him as that during this, just because you DJ at a lot of places around here.
Yeah.
He's seen Mike and I in rare form, along with a few of our friends, just tearing up that dance floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's that like?
It's amazing. I mean, it's like, if you guys are a little younger than me, but you remember the Tasmanian Devil, like
Yeah.
where he just like comes in and wreaks havoc. Like it's like 8 Tasmanian Devils. You guys just like come in and like no matter what song I'm playing, you're yeah. It's like the most aggressive thing I've ever seen, but I love it.
It is.
I mean, it could be like the bar's open. It's like 9 o'clock and there's like 2 old people like looking in each other's eyes like at the bar, and you guys are just like like, raging. But it's,
we like to get it started.
yeah,
We do. I feel like we pride ourselves on just opening it up.
Open this shit up.
But you also, I don't know if you wanted me to plug, but you also own and operate The Fix.
Yeah, well-
which is like an auto repair shop that I can't speak highly enough about. You've saved my butt quite a few times.
No, it's amazing how that works because, like I said, like you come out of the bar and you're like 10 out of 10, 100 miles an hour, like, yeah, you're raging.
Uh-huh.
And then like the next day you'll be like, Pete, my brakes are really bad. it's like I see you at your highest, I see you at your lowest. Like you hobble your car to me, and then I always look like Jesus. It's coming.
But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I can't. The Fix. If you're in the Doylestown area and you want to go get that car,
You need that fix.
you need that fix.
Yeah.
And again, he's fixed my car for a price that I feel like I'm ripping him off sometimes. But yeah, I think that's like The Fix on Facebook.
Yeah.
If you guys want to go follow that, see what's up with The Fix, you guys can see that sometimes you step out to go travel the world and surf naked and do those things that you do.
Done some shit.
I watch your Facebook and all. I'm like, where is he this time?
Yeah. Well,
Where have you been traveling lately? Just
this year we went to Peru
okay.
over the holiday, and that was awesome. Climbed Machu Picchu. Did some surfing with clothes this time.
Okay. Well,
Damn it.
that's still cooler than anything I've done the past few years. So, yeah.
Yeah, just a quick jaunt to Peru.
Yes.
Big deal.
But yeah, we're talking Isle of Dogs this week.
We're also talking.
Oh yes. Let me jump ahead of it's been 3 weeks since we've done this.
It's
The
always
same
been
amount of
3
time
weeks
that we always wait. Yeah.
But we're drinking Love Stout from Yards Brewing Company this week, which is seductively smooth, if their label is to be believed.
Yeah. These are kind of warm.
A warm stout, my favorite.
A recently purchased stout.
Oh, this is pretty good. I feel like everything we have by Yards is good.
Yeah.
And they're Philadelphia, right?
I feel like that's why it's so cheap, is because it's coming right
Because
from
it's
Philly.
local. Yeah, that makes sense.
Blessed.
Yeah, I wanted to do this one.
They're big enough where they don't have to charge like exorbitant prices for craft beer to begin with,
Right, yeah. It was Love Stout, and I keep saying Isle of Dogs, and it sounds like I love dogs.
There was a preview for the movie where they're like, they
Oh,
just
really?
kept saying it like I love dogs.
I love dogs.
dogs. I love dogs. So like they like made a whole deal of it.
It's like the sequel to
YouTube it.
Must Love Dogs.
That's what we were talking about for.
Yeah.
Must I love dogs?
Well, at first he was presented with the idea that he must love dogs, and now in the sequel he's like,
Must I love dogs?
I love dogs.
No, that's the third in the trilogy is I love dogs.
Oh, okay.
Must love dogs.
Must I love dogs? Okay.
I love dogs. The conclusion.
I don't even... Who is in Must Love Dogs?
Is that
Does anybody remember that? It
Which
was a
one
romantic comedy.
Oh, I'm confusing it with the one about the dog show. Best in Show. Just because it has dogs in it.
Oh, man. Did anybody... I mean, I don't know, because you went to, like, the county theater. Did anyone see the trailer for that film before this? Before they played this movie, the trailer for that one with, like, Will Arnett, and he's, like, a secret agent, and he's got to, like... His partner is a dog, and all the dogs can talk, and it's made by the same people who made, like, Beverly Hills Chihuahua or whatever. Oh, it looks so bad.
I didn't see that.
It was... The
Is that gonna be
trailer...
on the show?
Yes, I would love to review that. It looks so bad. All the dogs are talking, and at one point music just starts playing, and all the dogs are like dabbing and everything.
Do they have a Who Let the Dogs Out song in the trailer?
I don't know.
It's going to be in the movie.
I feel like they beat that to death probably in the Beverly Hills Chihuahua or whatever.
There's only so many dog songs you can go to, though.
Yeah.
You can.
I feel like I can't see him not as Job from
Oh,
Arrested
no.
Development. And,
Yeah.
like in anything I see, I just like yes, yeah, you know, that raspy, just you know, just like I feel like I can't pull him out of character. He's one of those guys like, and he kind of does play that character like
Yeah,
anything he's else.
I kind of thought he was bigger than like this kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't
But-
know if he does too much starring stuff though. He's kind of like not really a character actor, but what else has he starred in before? He was in the Let's Go to Prison, which did not do well at all.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else that he's been in like a lead role for.
Well, that's like David Cross.
BoJack.
Yeah.
But like live action.
Yeah, the Lego Batman movie.
Yeah.
He was Batman. But it's like David Cross was who's Tobias Funke on Arrested Development was like he got, I guess he didn't know it was going to turn into so much more, but he was in like one of the Alvin and the Chipmunks movies or something. So by the time they like roll around to the third or fourth one, he went on like Conan and he completely like blasted like one of the producers of like Alvin and the Chipmunks. He was just like, because like apparently like, oh, it was like Alvin and the Chipmunks like chipwrecked or something, and apparently his character was just supposed to be in like a mascot costume the entire time, and like this one like producer would not like let him out of this role. Like they were like, no, you have to be in the costume, like you can't just do voiceover later and we'll have a guy in the costume. And like he literally went on Conan and was like, fuck you for making me do that. It was really funny. But I can't imagine he got a lot of work after that.
Yeah.
For children's movies. But yeah. So Mike, what did you guys, we already talked about the beer.
Yeah.
Mike, would you like to read me that IMDb description of Isle of Dogs?
I sure would. This is a quick one. Set in Japan, Isle of Dogs follows a boy's odyssey in search of his lost dog.
That works for me.
That's good.
Quite
Nice
simple.
and tight and concise and
Yeah. So now I'm just going to give us a little Joe Notes. Isle of Dogs is directed by Wes Anderson. Wes Anderson has directed Bottle Rocket, Rushmore, The Royal Tenenbaums, The Life Aquatic, The Darjeeling Limited, Fantastic Mr. Fox, Moonrise Kingdom, and The Grand Budapest Hotel. Isle of Dogs is... the screenplay is by Wes Anderson. I think there was another screenplay credit in there. Actually, story by Wes Anderson, Roman Coppola, Jason Schwartzman. They often help Wes Anderson with his stuff. And this other name I'm going to butcher, Kenichi Nomura. No, actually,
Pretty good.
think I did it. I actually thought he was a screenplay writer, but I guess he's credited as contributing to the story.
oh, okay.
And we'll talk about him later. What else was I going to say? There's not much else to say besides the film's ensemble cast includes Bryan Cranston, Edward Norton, Bill Murray, Jeff Goldblum, Greta Gerwig, Frances McDormand, Courtney B. Vance, Fisher Stevens, Harvey Keitel, Liev Schreiber, Bob Balaban, Scarlett Johansson, Tilda Swinton, F. Murray Abraham, Frank Wood, and Yoko Ono. I didn't know that last one. But yeah, what a fucking stacked cast.
Like all of his movies, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm always the worst with voiceovers. I can never tell who's who. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, is that Bryan Cranston?
There's a
I knew
few in
Edward
here
Norton.
that-
I was like, but I didn't even know ScarJo was in it.
Yeah, I knew that. There's a lot of these that slipped past me.
I sort of guessed it, but he kind of does like, he masks his voice a little bit. He doesn't sound like himself, but Liev Schreiber, however you say his
right. Yeah.
name. For most of the movie, I was trying to figure out like who
was
is
he?
Spots. He was
Oh,
Spots,
was that
yeah.
Spots? Okay, because
He does a pretty good voice acting job in this.
he kind of tries to make himself sound like Bryan Cranston almost, because they're like brothers.
A little bit, and he tries to sound like not like robotic, but a little like more laced up
Okay.
than I think he normally does. Usually, he's playing like Ray Donovan or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of a different role for him. There was somebody else that was throwing me for a loop in this. I can't remember who.
I don't.
Maybe it was Bob Balaban.
I can't even. Yeah, I can't place a fraction of these people. But yeah, Pete, are you a big fan of Wes Anderson films at all?
Yeah, I enjoy him.
That's good. Yeah, we were just how many fingers am I holding up? The Facebook group. It's a new
Join
group.
us now. It's the hot trend.
It's a new group that we
Wow.
have, and we've been discussing some Wes Anderson movies. People have been ranking them. I can't say that I put my own ranked list up there, but I can't. I don't. It doesn't hold much weight. I
It
feel
could
like
change any day.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of movies of Wes Anderson that I'd love to revisit, but yeah, I mean, Wes Anderson does definitely shoots with such an intentionality, kind of.
He has the most distinct style.
Oh, most definitely.
I love the
like
colors.
filmmaker.
Like in all of his movies, I feel like there's like probably 3 colors that every movie has. Like it's like that Dijon mustard, like that, like an orangey red,
You're right.
and then like a seafoam green. Like I
Yeah.
feel like
Oh, yeah.
like those are like they're so powerful. in
Yeah,
his
he's got like
movies.
an
And,
Easter palette in like all of his
Yeah.
movies.
Oh, he does. Yeah.
Pale Easter palette. And then obviously, as it has been much talked about, like the framing in his movies is always like, you know, it's either in the center or it's divided into equal thirds, or, you know,
Right.
there's a lot of center lines, a lot of lines of 3. Everything is very either head on or perpendicular, or, you know, from the profile. There's not any like real like side angles or diagonal angles looking at a character ever in his movies.
It was kind of funny because some of the shots that he is kind of famous for, like there's one where it's like kind of like shooting downwards and it's like looking at somebody preparing sushi or like an arrangement of Japanese cuisine in this movie. I was kind of like, oh, that's a classic Wes Anderson shot, kind of, with the way everything's arranged, the way it's shooting down and everything. And it's funny because it's stop motion, but it's also funny because I was like, this just looks like a Tasty video too. Like,
That is true, yeah.
but to talk more broadly about this movie, it kind of had this tone of like this like whimsical melancholy the entire movie, where like it really rides that line of like being like, oh, it's kind of like whimsy, and then it's also like funny, and I don't know, or no, not funny, just melancholy, like sad, kind of.
The opposite of funny.
Yes, definitely. Oh, you know,
Funny, and by funny I mean devastatingly sad.
my cat got run over, and that's funny. Oh, I mean sad. I'm sorry. I don't know. It kind of it rides this line, and I never really felt like it was like, I kind of kept feeling like it left me cold a little. Like it never truly committed to like either of these things, and then like it never really. I don't know. There was
Yeah,
something.
my overall feeling was that it was like, because like Wes Anderson movies for me can either be like very funny, I feel like, and then often in the same film like devastatingly sad
yeah.
or heartbreaking, you know, and
Right.
like, and they're often sometimes in the same scene it'll accomplish that stuff where it'll show like really sad stuff happening, but they'll insert humor in there that's not like laugh out loud humor, but it like it's a humor that makes you feel for the characters more, because you're like, oh, like how could this go any like more wrong,
Right.
in some of the scenes. And I felt like this kind of like, rather than being at either of those two extremes, just kind of like pushed everything towards the middle, where I didn't think it was as funny as his other films. I didn't think it was as sad or as melancholy as some of his other films. I don't know if that's because the main characters are dogs, so I don't feel as much for them.
I don't think anybody died in this one.
No.
Yeah, that's true. It was also kind of like, I guess maybe it's hard to make these dogs portray emotions. Like it had to all kind of be in their eyes. I kind of almost started like a mental tally in my head, like how many times a character would have like tears in their eyes, and I like lost track after. I was like, Wes, you kind of blew your load with the tears thing.
And
like,
it is charming in its own right, but I thought that if it was going to be more charming and less sad, that it would at least have a lot more humor in it. Because like that's how I felt about Fantastic Mr. Fox, where it is one of my least favorite Wes Anderson movies, mainly just because I like his other movies so much. I still do really
Right.
like Fantastic Mr. Fox, but that one I feel like is not that sad, and like I feel like it doesn't have as much of like a. I don't really care about the characters in Fantastic Mr. Fox, but it's just so enjoyable and charming and funny that it's a great movie.
Oh, it's
When-
hella
when-
charming.
when you
Yeah.
add up like the sum of all its parts. Like it's just cute and quirky. Like there's nothing to really hate about that. Whereas this, I felt like I didn't get into the characters as much. I didn't feel enough emotion or, sadness or melancholy just through the tone of the film, even though it is some sort of dark subject material. I feel like there's just something missing in the connect there. But then it wasn't like funny enough for me. Like there's a few times that I laughed out loud. Like I thought the Oracle was a really funny character. Like my theater really laughed at that. And there's a few other lines just here and there, but like overall, like I think people were laughing a lot in the beginning, like when before the comedic timing has sort of gotten old. Like when you haven't seen a Wes Anderson movie in a while, there is that like very specific timing of like action, beat, reaction, beat. Like it's slow and paced like that, and people would just laugh like when characters would do things in the beginning of the movie, and then they sort of get tired of that, or at least used to that, and they're not laughing at those parts anymore.
Yeah, it really starts off strong. Like, I mean, they really go like gung-ho in the writing of kind of like, what if Wes Anderson were to make like Life of Pets or something, where it's kind of like, don't just do this, like, don't, sit there licking your wounds and then kind of like zoom in, like dog licking his wounds. Like, it's really funny. But then by the end, I just like lost interest in this movie kind of by the end. Like, we're like, that was like really funny and quirky, and then like there's one scene at the end where like Bryan Cranston's dog or whatever is injected with the serum, and then like his literal line is, "Wow, that's a really good serum." I was like, is there nothing else?
I love that part of it.
And maybe that's like Wes Anderson humor, but like at some point, I was like, I was kind of like,
I'm gonna say the most cliche thing here I can.
Right? Yes. But yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of Wes Anderson films can kind of do that, where there's a specificity of a tone can kind of feel like the absence of a tone in a movie, and like almost maybe like the failure to make a choice in a movie of kind of like, what should I be feeling? Am I supposed to be sad or laughing? And sometimes that can really work. And I thought in this movie, sometimes it did not work.
Mm-hmm. I was actually pretty impressed by like how they could convey emotion with the dogs. And they use silence a lot. Mm-hmm, like they use silence, so you're really like, really focused in on like what's going on, like eye movements, a wink here, like little stuff like that. I just saw. I was like, it's pretty good without being cartoony. Like
pretty expressive. Like there were parts where it felt like it was like almost like motion capture stop motion. I know it wasn't,
right,
but just like there's parts where I was like, I felt like I could see Bryan Cranston's like ticks and stuff like in his dog's character. So I do have to tip my hat to the animation in this movie, and I do think it's one of Wes Anderson's most beautiful movies. There's a lot of scenes in this where they're just like breathtakingly beautiful. I know he has a lot of freedom when you're animating a movie, to create whatever type of set you want. Like I really love when they're in their like little shelter that's just made of like all the different translucent, different like colored glass bottles. Yeah. And they shoot that with like the silhouettes of the dogs and the colors behind them. Like that's a really beautiful scene. And even when they're just on like the sort of like shale beach, like where there isn't a lot of color, they just find ways with the the contrast and whatnot to make it a pretty beautiful looking scene throughout most of this. So I was very impressed with the way it looked. He's a master at just making beautiful looking movies.
Oh, definitely.
That like being placed in Trash Island, like I paint, I do a little like bit of artwork myself. I just, play with the brushes a little bit, but like
triple threat,
like
DJ, mechanic, and artist.
But like, what a great thing for like the artist that is designing these scenes. Like Trash Island, I can make anything I want. Like,
right.
I can make a multicolored room of sake bottles. I can like you have unlimited colors, unlimited things to work with. We're probably just like, it's like this is gonna be such a good visual movie. Like,
it was, and they could do anything with that. To return real quick to like the I guess like the voice acting or whatever. Again, we'll get to a point of this movie, or just an idea of this movie that I don't like and overall affected why maybe I didn't like this more than like another Wes Anderson movie. So I'll say this, like with the caveat of, in a vacuum, I liked that they weren't like really dog-y characters. Like I liked that like these voice actors weren't like, "Ruff, like, you know, it was just, they were more so like Wes Anderson, like neuroses kind of characters, and it felt like the actors reading a script but being like really into it. They didn't have to, again, maybe some of them did, but they didn't have to like pitch their voice or do anything. It was just like, it felt like this like really kind of quirky,
they're
kind
just
of
Wes
table
Anderson
read
characters that happen to be dogs. Yeah,
right. Yeah,
I do appreciate that they didn't. Not that I ever thought that Wes Anderson would, but they didn't stoop to the level of most dog humor of like sniffing dogs' butts and peeing. Just stupid toilet humor that accompanies every like dog type of comedy. You know?
There were no turds in this movie.
And there wasn't even any real like dog puns, you know, like paws or, you know, rough or woof or anything like that. Like,
they had some dog puns in the beginning.
did they?
Yeah, I was just talking about that kind
Which
of, or
one?
maybe there was. I don't know, but in the beginning, it's again. I think the right. It's not cliche or anything.
Oh, the lick
in
your
the way
wounds one, yeah.
Right, but there was some stuff that was more along the lines of kind of like poking at like, you could only really make this joke if all of your main characters were dogs, kind of, you know, and it's Wes Anderson. He's going to do that, but he's obviously not going to be, again, like The Life of Pets, where it's kind of like, I don't know, like.
Well, and even like with the Oracle, which I thought was really funny, and like they could have like really easily gone into something where it's like big dog, little dog, and like a real like easy crutch to lean on would have been like the little dog has like a really deep voice and the little dog's actually a master. Which I feel like they do that a lot in pet movies. But instead, like they have humor with the Oracle that has nothing to do really with the fact that it's a small dog, other than the fact that it is dog humor and that it's misinterpreting TV, and it's assuming the TV is like, you know, fact, and it's being revered for its ability to understand what's going on the TV. So I like the fact that they found humor from new places while having dogs as characters.
But yeah, maybe let's talk about this kind of this was something where I've kind of been tiptoeing around, and it's the setting of this. It's takes place in Japan, and I don't know,
a fictional city in Japan,
right? And it's kind of this you know, like there's homage to like Kurosawa, especially in like that opening like dogfight. That's really great. They have like a lot of like, I think he even like samples like something from like Seven Samurai or something, like Japanese culture. Like it's really cool that he's
the soundtrack in the beginning, you mean? Or
yes, yeah.
I don't know if it's a sample, but they used that theme throughout the whole movie. Right, like the monk choir thing.
Yeah,
going
on. There was some specific like music cue during that fight that I was like, I've seen that before, kind of. Yeah, but yeah, no, definitely paying homage. But then they kind of pay homage to Japan, and it's kind of like you're paying homage to a popular culture idea of a culture, where I feel like this wasn't Japan as much as it was like an American's interpretation of Japanese culture. Like it kind of gets a little twisted. LA Times, Mashable both wrote some like really great pieces. Yeah, but it is kind of like what a white American kind of would make a movie about, like in Japan, of just kind of like, well, I've seen Japan through video games and movies and music, kind of like
this is what it must look like.
Like the character's name is Atari.
Yeah,
I meant to look that up because that did rub me the wrong way when I saw that, and I was like, well, maybe Atari means something and it's a name before it was a video game system from Japan that we obviously think of when we hear the name Atari, and like maybe we're the ones that are ascribing too much to it, but I didn't get to looking it up.
I had a friend, like, I was kind of like venting about this, and a friend said something to me that I did not realize, and when she said this, like, I kind of like snorted like out loud. It was kind of, she's like, it takes place in Japan, but like the main dog's name is Spots. And King, and like all of the collars are in English. I was just kind of like, I don't know. And it kind of also became like this thing. Like it's an interesting device to kind of like I think the opening shot of the cue card says like, you know, all like it's kind of cutesy. It's kind of like all dogs barks have been translated and or something. But it's like, why translate it to English?
Because the other characters speak in their native tongues.
And then there's no subtitles for an American audience. It's kind of this whole weird thing. I don't know. It's very alienating for the Japanese characters. They take a lot of different approaches
because yet they have all the Japanese characters speaking Japanese. But sometimes there'll be no subtitles and no translation. Sometimes there will be subtitles if it's like a really important part that we need to know. Or sometimes, like if they're giving a speech publicly, they have the Frances McDormand character who is translating, which... Why did they have to cast Frances McDormand there? Because they were doing so well in terms of... They don't technically whitewash anything in this movie. Like, they have all Japanese or Asian actors.
Oh, is she a Japanese character?
She's playing a Japanese translator.
Oh, okay. I didn't even
Or
realize.
at least they animated her to look Japanese. I mean, she speaks with a fully English accent, so maybe it was just poor animation for that character. But that was the one thing that like kind of rubbed me, where it was like, I mean, the character is speaking English, but I mean, people of Asian descent can speak English too. Like, because when you have like you have the dogs, and the dogs are all English, and that's one thing. And they also only cast like white males for all the dogs. That's another thing.
It's also like,
and then like they do cast, like there's a lot of people of Asian descent in this movie, but they put them in these roles speaking Japanese, even though they're marketing to an American audience. And it just kind of like, it ends up putting them on sort of like a lower tier in terms of relatability, where like, not only are the actual main characters all the white male dogs, but like we don't even really get a chance to relate to these other characters because there are people who are speaking plain English in this movie. So like automatically our brain is just like, all right, like I want to care more about this dog and relate more to this dog, because it takes less effort for me to, you know, have to read a subtitle for the other characters or pay attention to their emotions because I don't understand what they're actually saying in those scenes. Like, and I know on this podcast, I advocate all the time for like having characters speak in their actual native tongue and not using like it would have been really bad if they had the characters speaking English with like broken English, you know, Japanese accents. That would be a bad place to go.
Don't go
but that's what my whole argument is: don't set it in Japan.
The
movie doesn't need to take place in Japan.
Well,
Wes Anderson should be smart enough to look at the culture and the climate right now and be like, it's maybe not the right time to like make a movie that is going to tread on some toes in that way. And could this story be told somewhere else? Because then my other big problem with this is that, like, for the most part, the movie, it doesn't play into a lot of like stereotypes, so it's hard to call it like insensitive. Like there is a respect there for these cultures, even if it's not really your place to make that movie that's respecting those cultures. But the one thing that I can say is that like the mistreatment of dogs by Asian people sort of is a stereotype, and it's kind of a weird place to go with this movie. And like it's almost like this is the worst setting to place a movie about people that put dogs in internment camps.
Yeah, I think China is like the main culprit in that.
Again, this would be a much easier review if I hated this movie. You know, like if I was like, "Fuck this movie. This movie's not worth anything." But I do like this movie. I don't know, but I mean, like, I feel like I have like in 3 Billboards, we have this kind of like Irish director who comes in, Martin McDonagh. And he comes in and he kind of makes this movie about a country, our country, America, that he doesn't really know anything about. And he uses some weird plot tactics of kind of like, whoa, maybe you don't talk about like police brutality with people of color if you don't know what you're talking about. Like maybe that's like a really weird thing to do for like a plot point. And I feel like I can't like stand idly by with like this movie without like being like, hey, like, you know, Wes Anderson, like white guy from America, maybe don't like put, you know, like we all know Japan is like sushi and taiko drum, and but like maybe I think there's a little more to it than that, and
maybe go beyond like the spark notes of Japan.
Right, yeah, which makes me want to ask, like, and again, I like this movie, and it makes me want to ask, like, Wes Anderson, like, did this movie have to be set in Japan, you know? And
I mean, there is
to his response, he'd probably be like, well, I'm sure he'd say something much more like PR oriented, but I think he thought it'd be fun to play with these aesthetics of Japan in a Wes Anderson way. And that's cool because I want to see Wes Anderson make like a Japan culture-based movie, but that's also kind of the textbook definition of cultural appropriation, you know? Yeah. I don't know. So it's a hard well,
it's like you can use those aesthetics without having to resort to like wasabi poison.
Right. Yeah. Well, I feel like he like even in other movies, like I feel like he just goes down a checklist of like, I want to do one in Japan, I want to do one in India. I do
right.
You know what I mean? I think he's just checking off a box in his repertoire.
The setting is so big for him too, you know, because he really does like, you know, think in like visual terms and want to create these like, you know, tapestries of, you know, scenes and framing and everything. And but I also feel like you could have made this movie in Japan without, you know, like I said, like using wasabi poison or like making Japan seem like this exotic place. Like, you know, it's not exotic to the people who live in Japan. Yeah. And especially if all the characters in this movie are Japanese, like, you know, we don't have to show like the taiko drums. We don't have to show, like, I really didn't really, maybe it's because I'm not familiar with Kurosawa, but I didn't really appreciate the beginning of this movie. Just because it made it, like, I hate when it almost feels like xenophobic to like look at Japan that way and be like, oh, like ancient history and like, you know, this bloody battle and like this revolt and like these like, you know, tapestry paintings and stuff like that.
Well, like, that's the point, is that the Kurosawa thing is, it's cool, but it's also like, I know what I know about Japan and I'm writing this movie about it just from my intake of movies that were made there, kind of, you know, where it's not like I didn't actually base it on anything about the real Japan, kind of. And I mean, they do have like, this is set in like a future Japan, so you can,
it's like a retro future Japan. It is in the future for sure,
right?
You never know what year his movies are in.
Yeah, I mean, I do really like that aesthetic of it because it's like it's in the future, but like, you know, like the TVs are kind of like tube, like not flat screen TVs. It's not really futuristic looking at all, even though it is technically in the future.
But it's, I mean, again, just to kind of not end the thought. I mean, I'll keep it open, but Japan isn't Narnia or Hogwarts. You know, you can't make it up and be like, this is my fictional idea of Japan. And that's where I felt like Wes Anderson was kind of stepping in that. Well, I feel Three Billboards territory during this movie.
I feel like he just like goes hard with the stereotypes, like Grand Budapest Hotel. Like he's like,
definitely,
he's like pastries, you know, like mountains, snow, trams. You know, he's like doing the. He's like he hits like if it's here, you know it's here, like because he's just nailing stereotypes left and right.
Because he does even do it. Like I guess an argument for and also against it at the same time is like with Moonrise Kingdom, like. He kind of like does like sort of like a playing up of like the Maine, like coastal, like Northeast America culture in Moonrise Kingdom. But it's also like, I mean, you have the right to do that. Whereas
it's just like Royal Tenenbaums, like that was like a fake made up street in like New York City, but as a white director from America. It's kind of like, I think we talked about it before, but just like in Darjeeling Limited, maybe that'd be like a little more controversial if it came out like around now, where we do have a more sensitivity toward that, like taking the aesthetic of India, making kind of like Indian people props or whatever, and the only Indian character is kind of like, whoa, she's a hot Indian lady who's the love interest, kind of. Yeah. But I do have to credit Wes Anderson in that he kind of makes the Wilson brothers and who's the third person in
Jason
that?
Schwartzman.
And Jason Schwartzman. He kind of makes them the stereotype of like the ugly American tourist who's kind of like, who has no respect for anything. Yeah. And they're all terrible people in that movie. Yeah. So I don't know. That's not as bad.
Doesn't help that that's his like worst movie.
Yeah,
Darjeeling Limited.
I haven't seen Bottle Rocket.
I haven't seen Bottle Rocket.
It's not great.
But that's his first one. Yeah. So I mean,
I don't want to keep talking about this, but the Greta Gerwig character also, she's like the foreign exchange student from America. She doesn't work, but I also feel like that's a part of this larger problem we're just discussing, where it kind of pulls focus from the Japanese characters, because you're like, finally, somebody I can understand, kind of, because they're speaking English in an English movie or American movie.
Yeah, it is sort of similar to Darjeeling Limited, where it just takes Japan as this setting to put like American characters in. And of course she's an exchange student, and the dogs make less sense because they're not American, but they have Americanized names and they speak in American English. And
what was the fucking there's like 3 different points in this movie where there's like I don't know if this is part of like Japanese like art kind of culture that he was adapting from, but there was like 3 different uses of like mushroom clouds. And I feel like that's like a really not great thing to do as an American in a Japanese based movie.
Yeah, I didn't know, because there were times where he was definitely trying to pull from like different Japanese art aesthetics. Like there was the one time where I forget why, but they were showing like a tidal wave, and it was like the famous. Right. I forget what the painting's called. But you know what I'm talking about. The tidal wave painting. Yeah, I did notice that when the mushroom cloud came out. And I don't know if that's just us being more focused on that because of American guilt. Yeah. Although I would imagine they're pretty focused on that there too. Hey. I don't know. It's worse definitely that an American filmmaker is putting that in there. Like, just make that explosion lower to the ground. It doesn't need to mushroom.
Right, yeah, like make it like the fight scene where it's kind of a, it's just a ball on the ground instead of like whooshoo.
And they like sit on it there's like a beat where it's like, look at this explosion during one of them. And it's like, oh, all right, maybe let's make that a little bit shorter then, even so that we don't have time to think about what that means.
But it was easier to connect with the dogs than I think with anybody else.
Just because that's why I wish it was put somewhere else, because I think the dogs are pretty well written. Like there is a good story here.
Because with Atari kind of feels like the teachers in the Peanuts, kind of, where you're kind of like wah 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 wah, because we can't understand what he's saying. Most of us, the American audience, aren't bilingual like most of the world is. So it is. It's kind of like we just have to kind of take context. Yeah.
I like this character.
Yeah, no, I like his character too. Sometimes I did not like him during that fetch part. I was kind of like,
hey.
He was like, fetch, which is that's a Japanese term.
Japanese for fetch.
Fetch. Fetch. They say that all the time.
Well, he would say like fetchada or whatever he would pronounce it, which I don't know if that's worse or better.
Mike's going Wes Anderson on us. That's what he says. Oh, does he? I thought it was
pretty sure.
I thought it was like a plain American fetch or something. I don't know.
I could be wrong.
Fetch.
It might just be the way he pronounces it. Oh, there was one other thing that like it rubbed me wrong at first, and then when I was looking up the cast, I was like, oh, okay. But that when they said like, oh, the one character they introduced as Yoko Ono-san, and I was like, oh, that's like one step away from like naming a character Jackie Chan. Like, that's some real racist territory. And then you come to find out it's played by Yoko Ono.
Yoko Ono, yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, all right. Yeah. You get a pass for that one.
Right.
One thing that flowed through the whole movie that I really liked, and like I like had a little giggle like inside every time, was because all the dogs had the dog flu. They'd all just like cough randomly.
The sneezing randomly too, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It went through the whole movie. I would laugh. I just like laugh every time. It's like to the whole end of the movie, these dogs would just like cough and throw up here and there, like just like.
That was one of the early laughs where he was like, "You guys make me sick."
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't like. Or, I mean, really is a strong word. But I didn't really appreciate the communicator thing that the
like headset
spots had with.
Okay.
Because I feel like they were trying to like indicate that like they had such a strong connection because they were able to communicate through that. Mm-hmm. But then I feel like that makes the connection that Chief ends up building with Atari feel weaker because they don't have that. Like they don't communicate in that way. They don't have the communicator thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It just felt like have we ever needed to like give that sort of explanation for why humans can connect with dogs? Like,
no.
And I feel like we shouldn't need that in a movie about dogs.
I mean, like, he was kind of like a security employee. I don't know. Yeah, I guess I'm just... yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that...
And it did end up being like a physical plot device in terms of like, you know, he kept like checking to see if it was on, you know, to try and reach out to him. But it was like they would talk right to each other. Whereas like with Chief, the dog couldn't understand him. Mm-hmm. So they were connecting in the way that we would connect with an actual dog.
Yeah.
It's really touching.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. I think near the end where, again, I feel like the more involved we became away from the dogs, like the more we were in like the more Japan kind of setting with everybody speaking without subtitles, really, the like less connected and more almost bored I kind of felt during the movies. Like with the dogs, I was like, oh, I'm here for this. Like this is good. But even like the bonding between Bryan Cranston's character and like Chief, like I really liked that a lot too.
See, that's the thing is like I feel like they have a really great storyline for Chief, but they don't spend enough time on Chief, and they have all these other characters that they're focusing on.
Oh, it's like,
but there's not really like any growth or progression, or even like just basic like A to B, like you know. He's this at the beginning of the movie, he's that at the end of the movie. For any of the other characters. Like even like the other ones that are in Bryan Cranston's like club, like they're kind of just there to be filling out the crew. Like Edward Norton, who like has like the most speaking lines of like any of the other dogs, has no real distinguishable traits as a dog or as a character, has no real like wants or needs besides like sort of wanting to be like a good dog. Yeah. And, you know, but he wants what all the other dogs want, which is just to get back to the way life used to be before that. But it's not really like an actionable want or need.
It's kind of like how I feel in this group right now, the three of us. I'm like Edward Norton. I'm here, guys. Like I'll
pay attention to me.
I'll cough here and there.
Look at me. Like yeah, it was kind of like when they were like all in like that kind of trash shoot thing, or not. I don't even know what those were.
A trash processor or something.
Yeah,
thing that they were supposed to get burnt up in.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. When that split, so it was Atari and Bryan Cranston, and then the rest of the dog crew went into like a faulty like incinerator and whatever machine. I was just kind of like, if they were just all to die right now, like it really wouldn't make that much of a difference in the story.
Yeah. Like, we got the main characters.
Because we have the two main characters together. It was just kind of like, I don't know.
It was nice because it that's what initiates the bonding between Atari and Chief.
Right, because he doesn't have to act like Alpha Dog anymore.
Give us another scene inside the incinerator where those dogs, you know, maybe are fearing for their life because they're in an incinerator.
Right, but it ended up kind of just being like a punchline, which I still found funny.
Yeah.
Like,
there's not really any punchlines that fall flat in this movie. I feel like they take fewer attempts at punchlines in this movie.
Well, I think I thought was weird was like the trailer. I think one of the funniest parts of the trailer is when I forget, they have a scene of something and then they cut it with I think it's the Bill Murray dog, like kind of like turns around and looks at the camera and goes, wow, kind of. And then that happens in the movie and it's not funny at all, kind of, because like I think he crashes the plane and then he kind of like turns around, looks at the camera and goes, wow, like kind of. And I was kind of like, that's weird. It's kind of weird that the trailer almost knew Wes Anderson's like humor better than he did.
Like, hey, this was supposed to be funny.
Yeah, hey, the trailer promised me funny stuff. I get it though. I get trailers. I don't
want to get rid of this character because it would then be even more of like a white male boys club in this movie.
Right.
But Scarlett Johansson's character was so useless. And boring. Like it was just in there for literally 2 scenes.
Token female role.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And like I thought that was also a really missed opportunity to like have her join the crew and like have there be like another like a female voice in the crew, like kind of shake up the dynamic of this crew a little bit. And then like they also like they introduced the fact that she's like a circus trained like dog, like that wouldn't come in handy at some point, like throughout this like journey that they're on. Like I can imagine like a million scenarios where she has to do some kind of crazy acrobatics or something to get somewhere that they can't go. Like that just seemed like such an oversight to not include her more if she's going to be in the film at all. Like, and again, it would maybe be a worse decision to take her out, but it makes it more glaring to have her in such a subdued role. But it's like two scenes where we're like doggy objectifying her, and that's it.
Yeah. It seems like they were like they're like writing it. They're all sitting around a table like we are right now, and they're writing it. And like it's like they're like a quarter of the way through. They're like, "Shit, we have no female dogs in this movie at all. What do we do?" Like, it's like all scarred. Yeah,
I'm just realizing now that they did have one dog pun that I did find funny, because I guess other dog movies are kids movies, but they had the one where Bryan Cranston was like, "Oh, and you'll see a bitch named Nut." Nice, funny adult dog humor there.
It is marketed as a kids movie, though.
I mean, it's not like terribly like offensive or vulgar, you know. Like, I mean, they have like allusions to sex about like, oh, they mated or whatnot, and then the bitch. But I don't remember there being any other curse words. Because I don't even know if bitch is considered. I think you can say bitch on TV.
Yeah, I saw it in a theater of about half of the theater was kids, kind of, and I felt a little uncomfortable because I think they're so used to like a joke per minute, kind of, that the kids started laughing when it would switch to Japanese, kind of. And the like Megasaki, or what was his name?
Kobayashi.
Oh, Kobayashi. Somebody else was
Megasaki was the city.
Oh, okay. And sounds eerily close to Nagasaki.
But worse.
Yes,
it's Megasaki.
But yeah, every time Kobayashi would talk, that was like a punchline for them. They would all crack up because it was like kind of like this very pronounced like Japanese, and I was like, I don't know about this movie, man. I was just like, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know. But yeah,
I saw it at the county, and at the county theater. I went at like 4:00 on Friday.
I
was like, I'm going to see a movie. You go to a movie at 4:00 on a Friday, it's like all old people.
Oh, most definitely.
So like,
the theater's a lot of old
early
people.
bird special.
Like, at the end of it, this lady is like behind me. He's like, God, we see some weird movies sometimes. Just like, yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I went in like my mechanic clothes, and I just stopped at my house and like grabbed a piece of chocolate and put it in my pocket and just like went in there. I'm like in my dirty mechanic wear boots and everything, and just do and I'm like the youngest person there for sure.
Oh, that's every time I go to that theater. I'm always the youngest person. I was just telling these guys, but this was like a limited release, and I still have like a weird problem with that, just because, I mean, Mike was even talking about like it's such a widely advertised movie, and like all these Wes Anderson movies always just have like these very limited release where it's like the first 2 or 3 weeks, maybe not 2 or 3 weeks, but at least first week or two are in like these very kind of designated kind of indie theaters, larger theaters, cities, kind of, they'll only play. And then like a few weeks later, they'll kind of trickle out into, or they'll have like a wide release, I guess. Like, and it was just annoying for me because I had to drive like an extra 20 minutes out of the way. And then later I found out that the theater down the street acquired it like a week later. I don't know. It was just kind of like, what's the strategy behind that? Do they think Wes Anderson's not going to make that much money?
Yeah, I don't know, because I mean, it makes sense with a lot of indie movies, because it's like, rather than like risking all this money and going wide, let's see how it does. If it picks up steam, if it, does well per theater of the like 300 theaters that we release it to, like 1,000 at most, then we'll go wide and we'll go to like 3,000 theaters, and we'll see where it goes from there. We'll take it week by week. Whereas like I feel like Wes Anderson has like pretty well established himself as someone
that's going to household name.
Who's going to like he's like who you think of when you think of like indie film, even though he doesn't really make indie films.
Like
anymore.
dude, you don't have to play just the tip anymore with these
right, just go right in.
Go for it.
Like break, like don't you want to make more money?
I mean, it is going wide. I don't understand why it has to start limited anymore.
Right?
I don't think it's Isle of Dogs. I don't think it premiered at like film festivals or anything. Like it wasn't some like independent pickup that they're like, all right, let's see how it does. Like it was always going to go wide at some point. So why not start wide from the beginning? It's a marketable movie. It can be marketed to kids. It can be marketed to people like us who just love Wes Anderson movies. You know, there's a million people in this cast that people would love to see in a movie like this. And I'm pretty sure Fantastic Mr. Fox did relatively well.
Oh, definitely.
I don't think it was like breaking the bank or anything, but did pretty well. So yeah, I'm in your boat where like, why go limited at all? Just
it seems like
go
a
wide.
weird
And it was only like 2
business
weeks. I think
decision,
that it was limited, but it was weird.
Maybe that's what works for him. You know, he builds some
It might
builds
be-
like
it
a
might
little
be some-
hype. He has like
Yeah.
the movie people that go to see it and are like, oh hell, this movie's great,
Right,
You know,
yeah.
and then everybody's like, oh, it's
It
coming out in
could
my
also
theater
just be
next
like
week.
it could be his personal preference too, where like, I mean, he was in, you know, indie film for so long that like maybe he just wants to have that feeling of like, oh, that like 2 weeks before my movie plays at AMC and Cinemark and Regal and these big multiplex
Makes it more
theaters.
special.
Yeah, he wants to give the art theaters a chance before, you know, AMC buys all the reels.
That makes sense. Yeah.
That's the best
Um,
guess I can wager.
Is that cool with you?
Limited.
I guess I'll accept it. I don't know. It does. It's a stacked cast. It's an animated movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's definitely. I mean, this is definitely being like advertised on like Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network or like YouTube videos that like little kids watch. Like it's definitely marketed as a kids movie, and then again as like a movie lovers or Wes Anderson lovers. I don't know. It's just it's a weird release thing.
It was weird to see it at like theaters that are playing like Death of Stalin, which like will probably never make it to like the multiplex.
Oh, most definitely. Right. Where this will be in every AMC theater across the
eventually.
country next week. Yeah.
I think it'll do really well in our town.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And it's also, I don't know, just a weird, Wes Anderson has some weird release dates too. Like at one point, I feel like, at least during Fantastic Mr. Fox, I feel like he was kind of doing these like Oscar season releases, or now he just releases at the beginning of the year, kind of like we're right in the beginning of April.
He did that with Grand Budapest, and it still ended up getting nominated for an Oscar. That
right, yeah. I think even Moonrise Kingdom, like, I don't know. I feel like that was
he's been early year for a while now with his releases. I feel like every 2 years an early year release or something like that.
I kind of feel like that like shows that he's like, I don't really care.
He doesn't care, right? And I'm glad.
Yeah.
I hope this is up for Best Animated this year.
Was Fantastic Mr. Fox? I can't remember. I would have to imagine it was up.
Yeah, I think it was up. Yeah,
It's probably up against a Pixar movie and Lost.
I think it came out during. I might be wrong, but I think it came out the same year Up did.
Upper Wally, I feel like, yeah.
God, I'm tearing up thinking just about Up.
And Up was up for Best Picture, like with the big boys.
Yeah.
That was big.
That was one of the first 9 year,
Gets me
not
right
or 9 or 10 nominee ones, I think. When Up was up, right?
Yeah. But also, is Up really sad, or is the intro to Up
Just the
sad?
intro.
Yeah.
Just the intro. Yeah. They just like grab you by the heartstrings and just like.
It's like a beautifully made like short
it's like you got
animated
two short films before a Pixar movie.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the movie's kind of like, I'm a talking dog. I'm an old crotchety man. I'm a fat kid. You know, it's just. I mean, yeah.
Are there really spoilers to talk about in this movie?
No.
I don't even know if there's any real talking points I would have for anything spoiler. Maybe we can have a spoiler-free review for once.
Yeah, I mean,
I do have to say, I mean, this isn't to take it into spoiler territory at all, but I was starting to. Part of it was just me. I was very tired that day,
right.
but I was starting to fall asleep towards the end of this movie. And my girlfriend, who was not tired, was like, "Yeah, no, I was also kind of bored in that like last half."
No, so
specifically
was I.
like the last like the third quarter like mark of the
because
the
it becomes
movie.
less about the dogs.
Yeah,
and you're just kind of like,
Oh, here we go with humans doing the right thing again.
yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
And it did have a nice climax, but I feel like it also wasn't as intense or as nice as some of his climaxes can be. Mm-hmm. You know, where like everything's coming together and it's just kind of like sort of a bit of like chaos of like I think of like Moonrise Kingdom.
Right.
Or especially like Royal Tenenbaums, where it's just kind of like all these characters like meeting in like the climax. You know, all these different sort of storylines that have been working throughout, and they sort of culminate in the end and work really well. Or even in like Life Aquatic, where the characters have been together the entire time, but they sort of build this like emotional and not action oriented, but at least physical climax in movies like that. And this, it felt like it was a little quieter, a little less emotionally intense in the climax. I was like kind of expecting a scene where he chopped Kobayashi's head off.
Yeah.
Because of that intro scene. And I was kind of disappointed that didn't happen. But I guess, I mean, it is a pseudo kids movie.
You just said climax so many times. There were so many times where I'm going to be, that's what she said. That's what she said. That's what she said. That's what she said.
I always climax during Wes Anderson movies.
I just wanted to climax the entire time.
It's a very physical climax.
Alexander Desplat, the composer, always killing it. Even
It's his year, man.
even with Japanese music, he's killing it. Yeah, I don't know. There was something with the third act where it kind of started to sag.
And I think of this because they spent too much time with the Greta Gerwig character, who, even like the sort of problematic aspects aside, is just kind of a boring character. And like, I don't think Greta Gerwig is the best at voice acting, and I don't think they picked the greatest animation to fit her voice. Like, there's kind of a disconnect between the way her character looks and the way that Greta Gerwig talks, where I was just kind of like, I'm not really buying this.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah, but I'm looking through. I don't know. Oh yeah, but the like co-story writer, in addition to Jason Schwartzman, and one of the
Jason Schwartzman wasn't in this, was he?
He wasn't.
Is that like the first Wes Anderson one that he's not in?
No, he's not in a few.
He's the fellow with the giant nose, right?
He is.
Yeah.
The large schnoz.
I guess he's
Schnoz.
He's not in Life Aquatic, is he? He's in Darjeeling. He's in Rushmore, obviously. I guess he's not in Bottle Rocket, but I haven't seen it. I'm assuming, though.
I don't think so.
But he's in Fantastic Mr. Fox. He's in Darjeeling Limited. He's in Moonrise Kingdom. I want to say he's in Grand Budapest at some point in a cameo role.
I'm sure he is. Yeah, no, I mean, I know he usually helps write the story, and one of the many Coppolas helps. Yeah, what was I going to say? Oh, the
story credit.
Oh yeah, the Kenichi Nomura. Apparently, oh yeah, so he wasn't a Japanese screenwriter, or he wasn't like a screenwriter, but I mean, yeah, he did contribute to the story. But apparently, I was reading something where he was literally brought in for cultural sensitivity.
See, like, there's a lot of stuff in this movie where I feel like they did try to cover all their bases, but they didn't cover the biggest base of just like, should you make this movie here?
Right. Yeah.
You know,
I just feel like,
is it your story to tell? Does the movie need to be told here? And if it does, like, I guess I shouldn't say they cover all their bases, because I do think there's a version of this story that could be told in Japan with the beautiful Japanese aesthetics without having to resort to like, Japan is exotic and foreign and everything's different there, and look how funny they do things there, rather like just show Japanese people with Japanese aesthetics. Like,
again, like I was saying before, I think it's cool to be a fan of something, but it's less cool to borrow something without regard for context.
Well, yeah, like it reminded me of, like, this is a weird comparison, but do you remember like the sort of couple episode arc in Silicon Valley? I don't even know if it was an arc or if it was just like a character trait that he carried throughout, but the Erlich Bachman character, the T.J. Miller character, he sort of had like a fetish for Japanese culture where like he would wear the kimonos around and he was always telling people to like bow like this, and like it kind of felt like that, like in like film form, where it was like like you may actually appreciate the culture and you may technically be using it in the correct sense, but like it's something still feels off, like it's just not really your place to do it, and it's just weird.
No, it's exactly like it's like fucking like fat white neckbeard guys who are kind of like, my girlfriend's
an anime pillow.
an anime girl pillow, and I mostly just eat at Japanese restaurants. And it was just kind of like, yeah, but if you were to make a Japanese movie,
it also reminded me of the SNL skit with Jason Sudeikis as the Japanese professor, and it was like Taran Killam. I forget who the girl was. And they were like the students who like did genuinely love Japanese culture, but they would just like say stuff, and he would be like, no, you can't, you can't really say that. They would put like a san at like the end of his name.
It is. It's kind of like the Garugamesh commercial in like.
But I mean, all that is, I don't want to like completely dogpile on this movie, but because I did enjoy it. I did have a good time watching it. I do think there is a ridiculous amount of charm in this movie, even if there isn't as much emotion or as much humor in it. And I do think that Wes Anderson is just a master of his craft. He's at the top of his game, even if he's not making the best decision for this movie, at least.
Right.
I mean, Grand Budapest is like in my top 5. And Moonrise Kingdom before that.
There were times in this movie where I was like, I feel like I've already seen this in Fantastic Mr. Fox. Like, or maybe it was because Fantastic Mr. Fox was pushing the envelope so far because I just hadn't seen like a stop motion like feature length animation like really ever in theaters, and I was just kind of like, whoa, he's really doing it, man. And so when I saw this movie, it felt less significant, I guess. I don't know.
Okay. There's just a random fact that I just remembered.
Okay.
Because I remember reading like the runtime before I went to see it, and I was like, oh, nice. Hour 40 minutes. Like I haven't seen like a short movie in a while. And it felt long watching it. And then I was reading that this is actually the longest stop motion animation feature that's been made. It beat Coraline by like 3 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So I guess stop motion, because of the nature of how hard it is to make them, are generally much shorter movies.
Yeah. Right.
Because usually the average, I feel like, for movies now is like 2 hours. Like every movie I go to see, I'm like, I got to invest like 2.5 to 3 hours between the trailers and getting there and getting back to go see this movie.
Animated movies are sometimes shorter. I don't know, but
maybe they cut out a bunch of like the female dog scene. They're
like,
right. Like
20 minutes worth.
We added this in too late. Like,
cut those bitch scenes.
Yeah, very sexist.
And it's not offensive either. That's the proper term.
Another stop motion thing that I liked that they did was like if they were ever dogs were ever scratching themselves, or if there was like ever some dust kicked up, it would just be like yarn thrown in the air.
Oh yeah,
it was like really cool.
Or when his uncle or whatever would exhale when he was angry, they'd have like a bunch of like yarn come out of his nostrils or whatever.
Just nice stuff like that.
Yeah, it is really. The animation is really beautiful in it and creepy.
Yeah,
which I like.
Mm-hmm. There was a different aesthetic that from Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Yeah, Fantastic Mr. Fox was more like. I don't know. I want to say fairy tale, but that's not really
like friendly, woodsy.
Yeah,
Roald Dahl
actually whimsical. Whereas this parts of it reminded me of like Never-Ending Story, like the character design from that. Like where I remember, like I used to not be able to watch that movie as a kid because the flying dog thing scared me. The wolf scared me. Like everything scared me in that movie. And like there's times where they'll just look at Bryan Cranston. Dog before he gets like washed, and he's creepy looking, or like especially when they would have the close-ups on Nutmeg, the Scarlett Johansson character. There's something about her that's like I think because they tried to make it an attractive dog that it ends up looking like too close to human, and I'm like, it's weird. I don't like it.
Right? Yeah.
I'm sure the furries are gonna have a field day with that character.
I'd say the character that I didn't see that really fit in was Mira Kobayashi's assistant, like the guy,
the zombie guy.
The guy like looked like a skeleton.
Yeah,
I was like
something from Coraline.
Yeah, what was?
Like,
I didn't know
like
if that was an homage to
like a Nightmare Before Christmas. Like
it did.
Like,
I
just didn't fit in.
I didn't completely understand why he looked like that.
That was like on the nose creepy. Like he was. I mean, he was actually obviously designed to be creepy,
right? Yeah.
But it did look like it was from like a different movie. Whereas like the other ones looked like it was creepy. Because part of it was like the Uncanny Valley type thing where like the dogs just had too human of expressions or just something about them would look strange and like just real looking in a creepy way. Whereas he was just like, actually designed creepy, like big and tall and like the teeth. He actually, I don't know if either of you saw Gerald's Game on Netflix this year, but the big creepy character in Gerald's Game kind of looks like that, like just huge and like really sunken, dark, like eyeballs. And...
I was a little confused on why.
Yeah,
just why.
Yeah,
it was just bizarre choice. If anybody knows, please tell us in the comments. But yeah, So, do we want to get around to some fingers?
Yeah, we could. Let me get the Rotten Tomatoes out of the way.
All right.
On review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 92% based on 189 reviews with an average rating of 8.1 out of 10. The website's critical consensus reads, "The beautifully stop-motion animated Isle of Dogs finds Wes Anderson at his detail-oriented best while telling one of the director's most winsomely charming stories."
That's good. That's great. I like that.
Good job.
Neat.
I can go first.
Good. I was just stalling because I have no idea what I'm going to rate this film. I was like,
I nailed down a rating before.
Oh, okay.
Just because I was like, if I don't put something in stone, I can go back and forth in this movie like all day because
same.
There's parts of it that I think are his most technically well-made movie he's made because I think he's that good that he improves with every movie he makes. Like I felt that way about Moonrise, and then I felt that way when Grand Budapest came out, and where even if I didn't connect to those movies as much as like Life Aquatic or Royal Tenenbaums or something like that, they were still the most beautiful. The humor might even be at its best in those movies. This one felt like a step back in certain areas where, like I said before, it feels like a muted version of Wes Anderson, where it's not as funny as other Wes Anderson movies. It's not as there wasn't as much of an emotional catharsis or emotional release really at all. Like even if I do really like sort of the charm of like the relationship between Chief and Atari in this movie, and I do think that the progression, like I think Chief's storyline is great. I just wish they filled it out with better storylines around him,
right?
Because it's a cool story, this idea of like this stray dog that never really had a home, lives on Trash Island, and like all these sort of like spoiled dogs come to live there, and he's the one that sort of is able to be like, pick yourself up, like stop licking your wounds, like this is just how life is. And he hasn't really known about the comforts of like modern life, and and then once he's actually shown affection from a human, he's like, this is kind of nice, like this is kind of what I've been missing the entire time, and ends up being sort of the one that like leads this whole sort of rebellion to bring everything back to how it was.
I do like
and ends up getting a family in the end.
It presents a lot of like big ideas and concepts that I like. I'll talk about this more in my finger rating. Or I could just say it now. It's just there was a lot of like nicer kind of like large scale metaphors, like it's like migration, or it's like the treatment of other. Or like, it can even be as dark as like internment camps or the Holocaust or something. But what was I gonna get to? What were you talking about?
Dogs.
Dogs.
Just Bryan Cranston's character like finally getting a family, and the resolution to that storyline.
Or there was they would even kind of again. All of those things I just said, I kind of wish there was something that was more encapsulating, or they didn't just like quickly like touch on that and kind of go away. I wish there was more of a message with some of this. It instead of like he good, he bad, like oh, government bad and dogs good, they're man's best friend, kind of, it just seemed very simplistic at times. But I really liked the like Bryan Cranston bit that they visited twice when he reveals his background, and he says like, yeah, I wasn't always a stray. He was like, this like nice family took me in, and I don't know why, but one of the little kids woke me up and I bit his hand, and it was really bad. And then kind of like he even says, I haven't got better, like I'm adopted and I'm kind of house trained at this point, and I've really gained the loyalty of somewhere, and I have like this really nice setup. But again, still, some other like security employee grabbed my hand and he had to go to the emergency room because like I bit him so bad. He says like, I don't know why I do it. And it was just kind of like, these are like really nice thoughts, because this actually is like a dog problem, like they have the capability to hurt, like, but seriously hurt somebody. But it does
touch on like sort of like a human problem of like, if you've been hurt before, like it's hard to like let someone like in again.
Right.
Or like if you've never, even like in his case, like if you've never experienced love before, it's kind of a scary thing when someone shows affection for you. And that's why he's like, yeah, like I don't know why, but I bite. That's just like what I do. Like,
you guys are going so deep. It feels so good.
But I guess my complaint being that like
I wish it's nice in that
storyline, but I wish they had done more with the other characters rather than just being sort of these pieces for Bryan Cranston's, because it's not like it's necessarily a character study of Chief at all. Like that might work if he was the real focus of this movie, but he's just sort of like he doesn't even really feel like a protagonist. He just feels like the only one that has progression as a character in this movie. Right. I just wish there was more, because I think a lot of his other movies, like they'll have a ton of characters, but they'll sort of touch on like overarching themes of like A Life Aquatic, especially touching on just like loss and like abandonment and like trying to find like family again, and what does family actually mean, family especially in like Royal Tenenbaums and Darjeeling Limited. He touches on that in a lot of his movies, and this didn't feel like it had like a big overarching message. Like it felt like it had like the message with Bryan Cranston's character and the progression through his character, and like you mentioned, like little metaphors here and there about like the treatment of other and the internment camps and just dogs versus humans essentially, but it didn't really feel like it went too deep. So that's why I'm going to land at 3.5 fingers. It's an overall positive experience. I don't think I could justify 4 fingers while having this many complaints with it and while almost falling asleep in like the last half of it. But I have a lot of appreciation for it. I think Wes Anderson is an absolute master, and I think he even with this, he masterfully made something. I think I just sort of wish he would like masterfully make something else.
Right. Yeah.
Other than this. So 3.5 fingers.
Damn. Damn. Oh, he did it. Would you like to give your finger rating next?
Yeah, I won't have anything like comparable with the whole explanation.
Oh,
you guys see a lot of movies.
Yeah. I really don't have much else to say either.
You guys have seen many 5s and 4s. Like I see like a movie, I'm like, movie good, 5. Yeah. I smile, but yeah, it was a good movie. I did enjoy it. I give it a strong 4 fingers.
Cool.
For a movie noob like myself.
No problem. I mean, that was also, I was having a conversation with somebody else the other day, and I don't know. I always feel bad when I go and see a movie and somebody's like, how was that movie? And I want to give them like the kind of spiel that I give like on this podcast, where I'm like, so cultural appropriation is a real thing, and it's happening all across the movie industry. Don't even get me started with the imbalance of males and females in, it was just kind of like, instead I have to be like,
been a little lighter with mushroom clouds.
Instead I have to be like, it's good,
like me.
Yeah, no, well, no,
I DJ. Yeah. It's good. I like mechanic fix cars. Good, neat. Good. I go back to work now.
No, but I guess just because we see movies every week, you do have to become more pronounced. And I mean, before I started this podcast, I was just kind of like, oh, that movie kind of made me feel a little uncomfortable, but I still like loved it. It's a good movie, kind of, and I would never like touch on that spot of like, hey Joe, like what made you like feel like a little like weird and uncomfortable?
Yeah,
I don't know. Everybody has their thing that they're constantly interacting with, and you just become more able to define it. I don't know. The longer you do it, just like I come to the fix and I'm like, brakes bad, Pete. Brakes bad.
Brakes bad. What do?
They go squeak when I press pedal.
I hit deer. Car broke. Car broken.
Still not fixed.
What do?
Fix engine light still on. Years many. Man. Yeah, no, but I do feel like, again, if I didn't like this movie, this would be an easier movie to review. I'd just be like, fuck this movie, man. Wes Anderson was not careful with this, yada, yada, yada. Yeah. But I love Wes Anderson. I love the movies he makes. I love this movie. I really feel like I touched upon everything. I do like the idea of like Jeff Goldblum as like the gossip of the group, kind of. That was just funny. Yeah, I don't know. My biggest complaint was I couldn't always connect with Atari, and I feel like that was a weird decision, and that wasn't good filmmaking, or maybe like the no subtitles thing, or whatever. But those are just two spare little thoughts compared to the bigger conversation we had earlier. Jesus, this is going to be now the fourth movie in a row where Mike and I have had the same score. 3.5.
We're on the same cycle.
Yeah, we are. And I'm hoping I have a different... but 3.5 fingers. I'm hoping I have a different score than Mike soon. We got 2 other movies tonight.
We're recording these out of order, so the last 2 weeks might have been different. We'll find out.
Oh, that's true.
After this.
Yes.
You guys will already know. But all those scores are going to come out to 3.6 repeating, which will, of course, round down to 3.5 fingers. So me and Joe are right.
You wrong. Breaks bad.
I leave.
Yeah, so we don't have too much else to say since Joe does the intros for the podcast now and gets all that out of the way.
Those are interesting.
Yeah, if you agree or disagree, just leave a comment below on SoundCloud, YouTube, or Twitter, Facebook, wherever you're hearing, listening, or finding out about the podcast. We'd love to hear from you, and maybe even express your thoughts in the Facebook group. We do have posts up there now for Isle of Dogs and last week's Quiet Place, and the week before that's Ready Player One. So just interact with us there. We'd love to hear from you. And, of course, everything else you can find at howmanyfingerspodcast.com.
Do you guys have a fax number?
A fax? I don't even have a landline.
No, we don't.
No.
We have just about everything else, though. So, really.
Except a landline.
Yeah, except a landline. And a fax number. And, trying to think of some old...
Telegram.
Some other... Oh, yeah, Telegram. Morse... Oh, is that what you do?
Yeah, I think it's more
Telegram. Yeah. I'll take your word for
the
it.
British are coming. No,
yeah.
that's lanterns. Lanterns.
Yeah.
You guys have lanterns?
I don't know. Follow our lantern. You should probably see it from a distance and know that
the British are definitely coming.
The British are coming.
But yeah, tune in last week for A Quiet Place and the week before that for Ready Player One. And that's about it. Pete, thanks so much for coming on. This was awesome.
Good times.
Peter Granata, DJ Pete.
DJ Pete. Just call me
Check out The Fix on the street that Joe knows that I don't, because I don't live here.
Yeah, where is The Fix located?
Mechanicsville Road. How convenient.
Oh, wow.
How could you forget?
Mechanicsville Road. I'm mechanic. This my road.
This my road. Joe's bricks sound bad.
I fix.
I fix. The Fix. Follow it on Facebook.
All right. We'll see you guys next week. Goodbye.
Later.